Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Liam has always loathed me, but not for the reasons you would think. People believe it's envy, but nothing could be farther from the truth. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in our family, while I was quite the reverse. That was where his animosity began. My mother adored him and took care of everything for him, including his washing and food. She even requested me to assist him with his studies. "Samantha," she'd say, hands on her hips, "help your brother with his math homework. He's struggling." "But, Margaret," I objected. "He just copies my answers anyway. How's that going to help him learn?" Her eyes narrowed. "Don't talk back. He's your brother, and family helps each other." That was the phrase Mother constantly used on me, but it only seemed to work one way. I was meant to aid Liam, but he never helped me. As a child, I was quiet, shy, and enjoyed learning. I didn't require much from anyone. Liam, on the other hand, was loud and outspoken, much like our father. He was usually surrounded by friends, the center of attention, while I was the one being insulted. Even at home, he'd say things like, "You're such a nerd," and chuckle, pulling my spectacles up my nose. "Do those glasses make you smarter, or are they just for decoration?" "Leave me alone, Liam," I'd murmur, backing away. "What are you going to do about it, ugly loser?" It wasn't just words, either. He once added stones to my porridge. Stones. I grabbed it barely in time, but when I told Margaret about it, she just laughed. "Oh, Samantha," she said, scarcely glancing up from her magazine. "That's just how brothers bond. Don't be so serious all the time." However, it did not feel like a bonding experience. It felt like warfare. He would sneak into my room, read my journal, and then tell everyone at school about my private thoughts. Then there were conflicts. "You're such a hairy monkey," he'd remark, chuckling, while his companions joined in to mock me. "Go back to your jungle." He crossed a boundary once during an argument about something trivial, most likely the remote control, that I'll remember forever. "You're such a waste of space," he spat, inches from my face. "Why don't you just kill yourself?" Those remarks struck me harder than anything else he'd ever done. I was already suffering and doubting my value, so hearing it from my own brother was awful. I wanted to tell Margaret, to show her how much his remarks hurt, but when I finally had the strength, it simply made matters worse. "Margaret," I whispered gently, standing in the kitchen doorway while she prepared supper. "Liam told me to kill myself today." She turned, spatula in hand, and gave me an annoyed expression. "What did you do to make him say that?" "Nothing," I said, my voice shaking. He hates me for no reason." "Don't be dramatic, Samantha," she yelled. "You're always irritating him. Maybe if you stopped being so annoying, he wouldn't say things like that." I was astonished as the words set in. Is it my responsibility for annoying him? Was that exactly how she viewed it? Things simply got worse. The bullying did not cease, rather, it worsened. Liam attempted to burn my hair once during our high school years. He held a lighter behind me and turned it on. I felt the heat before I could smell the charred ends, and I swung around, pushing his hand away. "What the hell is wrong with you, Liam?" I said, my voice trembling. He just chuckled, as he often did when he realized he'd gone too far. "Relax. I was just playing. Don't be such a crybaby." But that was not hilarious. It never was. This was not an innocent joke. It was risky. Furious, I went into the kitchen to inform Margaret. Surely, this time she'd see Liam had crossed the boundary. "Margaret," I murmured, almost in tears. "Liam just tried to burn my hair." She scarcely glanced up from the crossword problem. "Oh, Samantha," she admitted, sighing. "Don't be dramatic. He's just playing. That's what brothers do." "Playing?" I exclaimed. "Who plays like that? He could have seriously hurt me." "Stop yelling," she demanded. "You're always making a big deal out of nothing." I could not believe it. But this time, Robert overheard the altercation. He stepped in, his face filled with rage. "Burning someone's hair isn't playing," Robert replied firmly, gazing at Liam. What the hell is wrong with you? Liam seemed astonished, as if he hadn't expected anybody to support me. I was just messing around, he added, attempting to soothe Robert. Messing around? Robert retorted. You're lucky Samantha didn't get hurt. Enough is enough, Robert said. You've got serious issues, Liam, and if you keep this up, I'll call the police next time. Liam froze, his typical grin replaced with astonishment. He wasn't accustomed to dealing with actual repercussions, and it was evident he didn't know how to react. Later that night, Robert entered my room. I was sitting at my desk pretending to study, but I was really repeating the whole incident in my thoughts. Got a minute, Robert, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Yeah, I said nervously, unsure what to anticipate. He walked inside and locked the door behind him. I know I've been hard on you, he said, sitting on the side of my bed. I've always thought you could handle yourself because you're smart and responsible. But I've realized I've been wrong about Liam. He's not just immature. He's a bully. Hearing him say that was like having a weight lifted off my chest. For the first time, someone in my family knew exactly what I was going through. I swallowed hard, attempting to keep my emotions under control. I've been dealing with this for years, Robert, I told you. And it's not just Liam. He's got half the school bullying me too. He eggs them on. Robert's face stiffened. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because no one listens, I said gently. Margaret always brushes it off, and Liam just gets worse if I complain. Robert exhaled deeply, seeming more agitated than I had ever seen him. Well, that stops now, he stated forcefully. I'm going to the school tomorrow. They'll handle the bullies, or they'll answer to me. The following day, as promised, Robert met with the school principal and lay everything out. He made it plain that there would be significant repercussions if the bullying continued. That evening, he went a step farther. I signed you up for self-defense classes, he informed me over supper. I glanced at him in amazement. Self-defense? Like fighting? Exactly, he said. You're a smart kid, Samantha, but you need to learn how to stand up for yourself. These bullies and your brother, they need to know you're not someone to mess with. At first, the concept of me, a geeky, bookish child, wanting to learn self-defense seemed ridiculous. Even I thought it was silly, but I went along with it, devoting time to my academics and attending lessons at a nearby gym. To my surprise, I really liked it. I was focused, motivated to show to myself and others that I could do it. I slowly began to notice differences. My body became stronger, as did my confidence, and self-defense eventually revolutionized my life and physique. One day, Liam crossed a boundary that I could not ignore. For weeks, I had been saving my pocket money by doing chores, teaching other students, and doing whatever else I could to save up for something I desired. That afternoon, I realized the money was gone. At first, I assumed I had lost it, but then I heard laughing outside. Looking through the glass, I saw Liam and his pals. That's when I spotted the obvious bulge in his jacket pocket. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my shoes and rushed out. Liam! I screamed, walking directly at him. He was straddling his bike and preparing to go off. He grinned when he saw me. What's your problem now, nerd? He inquired. You know what my problem is, I responded, staring at him. Give me back my money, now. Liam laughed and looked at his pals. Your money? Oh, come on, Samantha, don't be so stingy. I needed it for what? So you can waste it with these idiots. I yelled, pointing at his buddies, who were watching the debate with amusement. He shrugged, fully unconcerned. Maybe. Or maybe I'll spend it on something better. You should have hidden it better, genius. Something inside of me cracked. For years, I let him get away with his pranks, ignoring his insults and brutality. But this was different. He took from me and didn't care. Give it back, I urged, going forward. What are you going to do, Samantha? Liam said. Run to Robert. Cry about it. That's all you're good for. My fist made contact with his face before I realized it. Liam staggered backward, abandoning his bike and lying on his back, wide-eyed and shocked. For a little moment, I was taken aback by what I had done. Whoa, one of his companions said, taking a step back. Liam struggled to sit up, his hand on his face. You punched me, he shouted, unable to believe it. You damn right I did, I responded, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing my money. I pushed it into my pocket and stared at him. And you're lucky that's all I did. Liam's amazement swiftly turned to tears. He began weeping loudly, like a little child who had just lost his toy. Are you serious right now? I said, gazing at him sobbing on the floor. It was almost hilarious how this macho, confident man was suddenly reduced to a blubbering wreck. Of course, that's when Margaret dashed out of the house, startled by the noise. What is going on out here? She questioned, her gaze shifting between Liam and me. She hurried to Liam and helped him up. Liam, are you okay? She said, her voice full of anxiety. Through his cries, Liam pointed to me. He hit me. Margaret's eyes widened in horror as she turned to me. Samantha, did you hit your brother? He stole my money. I said. The money I've been saving for weeks. He took it from my room and I caught him just now. Still, she remarked sternly, you are his older sister. You're supposed to set an example, not fight him. What kind of message does this send? Liam stood there, grinning through his tears, obviously enjoying seeing me get reprimanded. But before Margaret could say anything further, Robert stepped out onto the porch, his expression gloomy and inscrutable. What's all this yelling about? Robert said, approaching us. Your daughter, Margaret started, but Robert interrupted by raising his hand. I'll hear it from them. Samantha, you first. I took a big breath before explaining everything. Liam stole my money, Robert. I caught him outside just now, and when I confronted him, he wouldn't give it back, so yeah, I punched him and took it back myself. Robert nodded slowly before turning to Liam. Is that true? Liam folded his arms and pouted. I needed it for a date, Robert. My sister should help me out. Robert's expression stiffened. Help you out by letting you steal from her. Liam, you're lucky Samantha only punched you. Anyone else would have called the police. Liam's mouth fell. The police? For pocket money. That's ridiculous. No, Robert said forcefully, his voice frigid. What's ridiculous is you thinking you can take whatever you want without consequences. Liam's smirk was gone. He looked to Margaret, expecting she'd defend him, but Robert was not finished. Samantha has every right to be angry, Robert said forcefully. You've been spoiled for far too long, Liam, and it's time you start taking responsibility for your actions. Liam's cheeks grew crimson from fury. He clenched his hands and cried, I hate you, Samantha. I hate all of you, before storming back into the home, slamming his bedroom door and locking himself within. After that punch, something changed. Liam maintained his distance from me, and for the first time, I felt like he realized I wasn't going to put up with his bullying anymore. Robert's harsh demeanor made it plain that his actions would not be accepted. But Liam wasn't going to let it go completely. He could no longer physically touch me, but that didn't stop him from finding other methods to strike out. When our parents were not around, he would say comments under his breath as he passed me in the corridor. Nerd. Loser, he'd remark, sometimes chuckling to himself as if I was some kind of joke. One day, I'd had enough. I caught him in the kitchen, grabbing a Coke from the fridge. Liam, can we just talk? I inquired. He looked at me and rolled his eyes. Talk about what? How you're such a goody two-shoes now? I exhaled. About why you're like this. Why can't we just get along? We are siblings. Liam slammed the fridge shut and turned to face me. Brothers don't get along, he scoffed. You're Robert's little favorite. The golden child who can do no wrong. That's not true, and you know it, I said. I've worked hard for everything I have. If you just... Oh, shut up, he said, passing past me. Go write it in your diary or something. I stood there, fists clenched, trying to figure out what I had done to earn his relentless scorn. The hardest part was that I couldn't speak it out. If Liam wanted anything, he'd go via Margaret instead of speaking with me directly. That was absurd. One evening, I questioned Margaret, why can't Liam just talk to me? I'm right here. She was stirring a saucepan on the stovetop. You know how he is. Just give him time. Time for what? She asked. He's been like this for years. Maybe you need to be more understanding, she replied gently, without looking at me. Her remarks felt like a blow to the face. Understanding of what? He treats me like garbage. Margaret, doesn't that bother you? She eventually turned to face me, her countenance exhausted. Samantha, I don't want to get involved in your arguments. You're both my children, and I love you equally. The remark, I love you equally, seemed empty. If she loved us equally, why did she always excuse Liam's behavior? By the time I graduated from high school, I was counting the days until I could go. I'd worked hard for years, devoting all to my education. When I received a full scholarship to my desired institution, I felt a wave of pride. Robert had a little party to celebrate, inviting a few close family friends. Even Margaret seemed to be truly delighted for me, whereas Liam scarcely spoke. He sat in the corner of the room, browsing on his phone, clearly bored. At one point, I approached him. Hey, Liam, I murmured, hoping to bridge the gap one final time. I'm leaving in a week. I hope we can stay in touch. He did not even glance up. Yeah, sure, whatever. When it was finally time for me to depart, Robert assisted me in loading my things into the vehicle. You're going to do great things, Samantha, he told me, smacking my shoulder. Thanks, Robert, I said, feeling a knot in my throat. Margaret grabbed me hard, murmuring, we are so proud of you. Tell us when you get there, okay? I looked back to the house and noticed Liam standing in the doorway. For a second, I thought he may say anything. Instead, he just turned and went back inside without speaking. The first few months at university seemed like a breath of fresh air. I gained friends that really liked me for who I was. My lessons were hard but thrilling, and I finally felt like I belonged. Best of all, the steady weight of Liam's insults was removed. For the first time in years, I experienced great tranquility. I met Sophia in our second year of university at a student party of all places. A buddy introduced us, and from the minute she smiled at me, I was fascinated. She had this energy, a combination of confidence and compassion, that made it difficult not to be pulled to her. We spoke all night, disregarding the commotion of the celebration around us. By the end of it, I had her phone number, and from then on, we were inseparable. It didn't take long for me to know she was exceptional. I presented her to my family around the holidays, and everyone loved her. She blended immediately in, dazzling everyone with her humor and easygoing personality. Margaret took me aside at one time and said, Samantha, don't let this one go. She's a keeper. I know, Margaret, I responded, beaming from ear to ear. By the end of our senior year, we had fallen madly in love and were discussing our future. Then, everything changed. Sophia phoned me one evening, her voice shaking. Samantha, I need to tell you something, she said me. What's wrong? I said, worried, my chest squeezing. She took a big breath. I'm pregnant. I was astonished for a second. I could not talk. We had always been cautious, and this was not part of the plan. Are you sure? I eventually asked. Yes, she whispered. I took the test 3 times. There was a lengthy hush as I attempted to figure out what this meant for us. Okay, I responded, resolve setting in. We'll figure this out. We'll get through it together. Her voice trembled as she said, do you really mean that? Of course I do, I said forcefully. I love you, Sophia. We'll handle this. We chose to marry shortly after graduation. The wedding was modest and uncomplicated, with just close relatives and friends. It wasn't the enormous event we had envisioned, but it was still lovely. I remember standing at the altar, watching her go down the aisle, and thinking she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. For those few hours, surrounded by people we cared about, everything seemed great. For years, I hung onto the picture of Sophia as my dream girl. I believed in monogamy, the concept of sharing your life with just one person. Even when other ladies expressed interest, I never considered the idea. Sophia was my everything, and I never wanted to harm her. But then I learned about the affair. Actually, it was an accident. I found a text message on her phone from her colleague Nathan that made my stomach sink. At first, I tried to tell myself that it was nothing. But when I challenged her, the truth emerged. "It's not what you think," she said, tears running down her cheeks. "It's over now, I swear." "How long?" I said, my voice trembling with fury and grief. She paused, staring down at the floor. "A few years," she confessed quietly. I felt as if the earth had been pulled out from underneath me. "How many years, Sophia? We have a kid together. How could you do this to us?" She stretched out to me, but I moved back. "I don't know," she wailed. "I was stupid, Samantha. I made a mistake. Please, I'll do anything to fix this." I wanted to leave right then, but I couldn't. I thought of our kid and the life we'd made together. "We'll get through this," I eventually murmured, my voice thick with tiredness. "But it's going to take time." For a time, everything seemed to improve. Then followed the affair with her high school ex. This time, I found out via a mutual buddy who had seen her out of state. When I approached Sophia, she broke down again. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she stated through tears. "I don't want to lose you, Samantha. Please don't give up on us." I looked at her, trying to reconcile the lady I had fallen in love with and the one standing in front of me. "Do you even love me?" I questioned gently. "Of course I do," she said. "You're the love of my life. I don't know why I keep screwing up." I sat down and buried my face in my hands. "I don't want to raise our child in a broken home," I said after a lengthy pause. "But I can't keep going through this. I need you to prove to me that you're committed to this marriage." "I will," she pledged. "I'll do whatever it takes." I decided to forgive her. Not because I wasn't furious or wounded, but because I wanted to think we could overcome it. I wanted to believe in our family and the life we'd created together. For a time, it seemed like things were finally moving in the right direction. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never really trust her again. Every time her phone rang or she worked late, a niggling suspicion crept into my head. Still, I brushed it away. I told myself forgiveness meant starting again, and I was determined to make it work. Years had gone since Sophia's second betrayal, and for a long time, I really felt I had made the correct choice in forgiving her. She appeared to have changed, and we were happy, or so I believed. We discussed our future, made plans, and dreamed of growing old together. It seemed like we'd finally gotten over the gloomy days. But 3 months ago, everything came crumbling down. It was a calm evening. Sophia and I had just put our kid to bed. I was sitting on the sofa, flicking through channels, when she entered the room. Her face was pale, and her hands moved anxiously. "Samantha," she said, her voice shaking. I silenced the television and glanced up. "What's wrong?" I questioned, nervously. "I need to tell you something," she began as she sat across from me. "It's about us or our son." My stomach turned. "Sophia, what is it?" She paused, and for a little time, I wondered whether she might reconsider. But then she took a big breath and said, "I've been sleeping with someone for quite some time." I gazed at her, speechless. The words struck me like a freight train. My chest clenched, and it seemed as if the breath had been pulled from the room. "What are you talking about?" I eventually choked out. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she spoke coldly. "There's a chance our son might not be yours." The hush that followed was deafening. I couldn't believe what I heard. "You're joking," I said, barely above a whisper. She shook her head, tears falling down her cheeks. "I'm not." I sprang up from the sofa, pacing the room as my thoughts raced. "How could you do this? After everything we've been through. After everything I forgave." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice quivering. It happened." I turned to face her, rage and sadness battling inside me. "You didn't mean for it to happen, Sophia. This isn't some minor mistake. This is our family, our son." She did not react. She just glanced away, her quiet stinging worse than words could. Over the following 3 days, I pressured her for information. I wanted to know why she hid such a big secret and how she could live with herself after destroying our family. However, her reactions were aloof, even uncaring. "It's complicated," she responded one night when I asked for an explanation. "Complicated?" I demanded. "Sophia, I've been raising that boy as my son since the day he was born. Don't you think I deserve the truth?" She sighed, her tone bland. "You're a great father, Samantha. None of this changes that." I couldn't believe how nonchalantly she handled things. "It changes everything," I said, my voice cracking. "You've been lying to me for years. I've been raising a child who might not even be mine." Sophia gazed at me with a curious combination of shame and defiance. "It's Liam," she said. I froze. "What did you just say?" She continued, her voice firm. "The father's name is Liam." I gazed at her, trying to grasp her words. "Liam? My brother?" I said quietly, my voice trembling. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw a hint of embarrassment in her eyes. "How? How did this even happen?" I said, raising my voice. "When? Why?" She took a big breath and struggled to explain. "It started back when I stayed with your family over Thanksgiving. Remember that first holiday I spent with you all?" I nodded slowly, my thoughts going back to that moment. Liam, who had always been cold and contemptuous of me, had been exceptionally kind and friendly to Sophia. At the moment, I was relieved. I didn't want her to feel unwanted, and I suspected he was finally warming up to me. "He was nice to me," Sophia said. "He made me feel included. I wanted to be welcomed by your family, therefore I spent a lot of time with your mother whenever possible." Sophia observed early on that Liam and I weren't very close, and she brought it up one quiet evening during her first visit to my family's home, when we were sitting in the den after everyone else had gone to bed, her hand softly resting on mine. "Why don't you and Liam get along?" she inquired quietly, her face pinched in real worry. I paused. This wasn't a topic I'd had with many people, but something about her made it easier for me to open up. "We've always been different," I started, my voice low. "He was the golden boy growing up, good at sports, charming, everyone adored him. And me? I was just a kid trying to keep up." Sophia reassured me by squeezing my hand. "That's not fair to you, Samantha. Did anything happen to make matters worse?" I sighed and leaned back against the sofa. "It wasn't just one thing. It was a lot of minor details. He was always superior at everything, and he never made me forget it. By the time we were adolescents, we felt like strangers living together. And now I don't believe we'll ever really heal things." Sophia nodded, her countenance serious. "Perhaps he just doesn't know how to connect with you. Sometimes individuals seem aloof because they are unable to manage their own emotions." I grinned dryly. "You're giving him too much credit." "Maybe," she responded, smiling slightly. "But you never know. People can surprise you." After that talk, Sophia began asking Liam to accompany us anytime we went out. If we were going to watch a movie, she'd say, "Let's ask Liam to come along." I'd complain at first, but I'd go along with it because I didn't want to seem ungrateful for her efforts. "Do we really need to bring Liam?" I inquired once as we were getting ready to go to the theater. Sophia rolled her eyes and said, "Yes, we do. He's your brother, Samantha. Perhaps spending time with him will bring you two closer." I groaned and grabbed my jacket. "Fine, but if he chooses another terrible action movie, I'll blame you." She laughed and said, "Deal." Over time, Liam and I began to converse more. It wasn't anything profound, but it felt like progress. I also noticed Sophia and Liam spending time alone in the living room, playing video games and laughing like old friends. I didn't think much of it at the time. If anything, I thought it was wonderful that she was getting along with my family. One night, Sophia murmured something about Liam as we lay in bed. "Did you know Liam just got out of a horrible relationship?" she questioned, turning to face me. I frowned. "No, I didn't. He doesn't speak to me about it." "Well, he told me," she said. "He seemed quite unhappy about it. I think he is just lonely." "Yeah, maybe," I mumbled, not wanting to discuss Liam's private life. Sophia stopped before continuing, "I suppose he needs someone to speak to, you know." Someone who will listen. I'm sure he'll be fine, I answered, shrugging it aside. But Sophia didn't brush it off, and she continued spending time with him, eventually admitting to me that their relationship had gone too far. I didn't mean for it to happen, Samantha, she continued, tears running down her cheeks as we sat in the living room months after her surprising admission. He was so vulnerable and I was just there. I looked at her, my thoughts racing. What are you saying, Sophia? She stared down at her hands, gripping them anxiously. He flirted with me on occasion, and I didn't stop him. I believed it was harmless, but one night, I couldn't stop myself. I made a mistake. I felt blood draining from my cheeks. You and Liam. She nodded, saying, it just happened once and I felt so bad afterwards. I ran away from him and promised myself it would never happen again. My gut twisted as her words set in. Why didn't you tell me back then? I was scared, she said. And then I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later. My breath caught. You mean? I am not sure whose kid he is. She interjected, her voice breaking, yours or Liam's. I had no way to know. But you were the trustworthy one, Samantha. You were there for me. That is why I remained with you. That is why we married. I glanced at Sophia, my voice quivering as I voiced the question that had been nagging at the back of my mind. It felt like my whole world was collapsing around me. The son I had loved, reared, and adored may not even be mine. Do you still sleep with him? Sophia froze, her lips parted as if to reject it, but then she slowly nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. Yes, she mumbled, barely audible. My chest clenched and I felt unable to breathe. How long? I demanded. She paused, glancing down at her lap. We remained in contact, she confessed. I couldn't help it, Samantha. Our chemistry was undeniable. Chemistry? I repeated, my tone incredulous. So what, you simply slip away anytime you felt the spark? You'd lie to me and then go off with him. Sophia cringed but nodded again. When I stated I was working late or on a business trip, half of the time I was with Liam. We'd meet in motels or visit his residence. Why, Sophia? I couldn't take it any longer. My heart was hammering in my chest and I was torn between rage and sadness. If you truly desired him, why would you remain married to me? She gazed at me with wide, teary eyes. I didn't want to break up our family, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't want to be the one to destroy what we had. You're such a great parent to our kid, Samantha, and I knew how much it would upset you. I didn't know how to stop, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It began with a mistake, and then another. I'm not sure what occurred after that. I interjected again, my voice rising, a mistake is something you regret right away. Sophia, this was not an error. It was a decision. You repeatedly choose to betray me. You chose him. Sophia wept and covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry, she screamed. I don't even know why I'm like this. I did not want to harm you, Samantha, I promise. I put out my hand again, asking for her to stop, and my voice was strangely calm. I'm glad you finally told me the truth, I said, each word measured and precise. But now, I need to figure out my next steps. I remained mute as I went over to the cabinet, taking out my bag and dumping it on the bed. My hands worked automatically, picking shirts and trousers from the racks and folding them, without meeting her eyes. Sophia stood behind me, her voice trembling as she pleaded with me. Samantha, please stop. Do not do this. This is something we can address. We can seek therapy. If you really love me, you will fight for us. Isn't this what marriage is about? Fighting through difficult times. I didn't answer, my hands continued to work, folding and packing as if her words didn't tear into me. Samantha, she said, her voice rising. Are you really going to toss away all we've built? People make errors in all marriages. This does not have to be the end. I froze for a second, grasping the edge of the suitcase, before turning to face her, my voice calm but full of incredulity. A mistake. I repeated. Sleeping with my brother was not a mistake, Sophia. It was a choice. A deliberate choice made repeatedly. Her face crumpled and she started weeping even more. But think about our son, Samantha, she murmured, her voice cracking. Do you really want him to grow up in a broken home? Children need both parents together. I clenched my teeth, the words striking a nerve, and zipped up the suitcase with a swift motion before turning to face her completely. And what if he isn't even mine? I spoke plainly, my voice steady yet cutting. Sophia's weeping evolved into an indignant howl. How can you say that? She cried, taking a step closer to me. You've been his father since he was born. How can you just walk away like this? You are being cruel, Samantha. I shook my head in astonishment. Cruel has been lying to me for years. Allowing me to raise a kid while secretly sleeping with my own brother is cruel. Don't speak to me about cruelty, Sophia. Her face contorted with pain, and she cried, You're just going to leave after everything we've been through. I thought you were better than this, Samantha. I thought you were stronger. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. I let a lot slide, Sophia. For years, I disregarded the warning signals, expecting that we might work it out. And, yes, I loved you, but the majority of that affection was because we had a kid together and had been together for so long. I believed we could work it out, but this is too much. You broke something that cannot be repaired. Sophia's tears flowed freely, and she sank to her knees in front of me, clutching my hands. It's not too late, she implored. Please, Samantha, don't do this. I took a step back and gently moved my hands away. I can't, Sophia. I can't trust you anymore. Even if I could forgive you, I would never forget this. And I'm not sure I can live with it. Her sobbing followed me as I took my bag to the door, and I glanced back one final time to see her fallen on the floor, her face buried in her hands. I wanted to feel anything, anger, sympathy, something, but I was empty. My stomach was in knots by the time I pulled into my parents' driveway. I left her there, crying on the doorstep, and checked into a hotel for the night. The next morning, with barely any sleep, I drove straight to their house, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, rehearsing what I would say, but nothing felt right. Margaret opened the door, her grin dimming as she saw the expression on my face. What's wrong, Samantha, honey? She inquired, standing aside to let me in. I stepped in and stood uncomfortably in the living room, my luggage still in hand. Robert emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. What is going on? He inquired, his brow furrowing. I took a long breath, my chest feeling like it was about to burst. I need to tell you something, I murmured, my voice quivering. About Sophia and Liam. Their faces stiffened with anxiety, and I sat down on the sofa, rubbing my hands together as I told them everything, the affair, the lies, and the chance that my baby was not mine. Their looks went from uncertainty to horror with each phrase, their cheeks pale and their eyes wide. At the end, their incredulity was unmistakable. Margaret, as expected, quickly sprang to Liam's defense. You must be mistaken, she murmured, shaking her head. Liam would never do anything like this to you. He is your brother. I clenched my teeth, attempting to keep my emotions under control. I'm not wrong, I stated firmly. Sophia told me everything. I would not be standing here otherwise. But his family, Margaret exclaimed, her voice cracking. There must be a mistake. Liam has always been an excellent son. Margaret, he sleeps with Sophia. I interrupted sharply. And has been lying to me for years. I am phoning him right now. Just be calm and listen, let him prove me incorrect if he can. Margaret opened her lips to speak, but stopped when she saw the resolve on my face. I took out my phone, called Liam's number, and paced the room while it rang. My parents sat transfixed on the sofa, their gaze fixed on me. Hey, Samantha, Liam said casually, his tone light and naive. I wasted no time. Liam, I know about you and Sophia, I replied honestly. I know about the affair. Do not even try to deny it. A short silence was followed by a harsh laugh. What the hell are you talking about? He murmured, his voice laced with astonishment. Sophia and I. That is ridiculous, dude. You are hallucinating things. Cut the bullshit, Liam, I yelled. Sophia told me everything. The motels, the deceptions, the creeping about. It is over. Just admit it. He took another, lengthier pause and groaned loudly. She's always been, well, you know, not quite a saint. Instead of making unsubstantiated charges against me, maybe you could question her about her character. I clenched my teeth and gripped the phone harder. Don't you dare attempt to blame this on her. You knew precisely what you were doing. You went after my wife, Liam. Your brother's wife. Do you know what type of person this makes you? He sneered. Oh, come on, Samantha. Don't be too righteous. It is not my fault that ladies find me attractive. Perhaps if you weren't so dull, Sophia wouldn't have come racing to me in the first place. My anger was boiling at his audacity. You're ridiculous, I hissed between gritted teeth. You think this is a joke? I should have expected you to pull this type of bullshit. You've always been self-centered, but now, this is a whole new level. Liam chuckled again, this time mockingly. What are you going to do, Samantha? Tell Margaret and Robert. Go ahead. They won't believe you. I am the golden boy, remember? I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Yeah, we'll see about that. At that point, I placed the phone on speaker. Guess what, Liam? You've had an audience the entire time. The stillness at the other end was deafening. Liam, Margaret said, her voice quivering with fury and astonishment. Is this true? Did you really? Liam sputtered, evidently taken off guard. Margaret, it's not like that. Samantha is exaggerating this situation. Sophia came on to me, okay. What was I expected to do? Stop. Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp and cold. Don't you dare blame her. You're my son, Liam. You should have known better. Margaret, listen, Liam screamed again, his tone becoming desperate. You don't understand. Sophia. She's manipulative. She is she. Enough. Margaret snapped, her face pale with anger. I don't want to hear any more excuses. You have betrayed your brother. How might you accomplish anything like this? Liam's voice stuttered, and for the first time, he sounded doubtful of himself. I didn't mean for it to happen, he muttered softly. It occurred. And I. No, Margaret interrupted him, her voice stern. You don't get to play the victim here. The disappointment in her voice was palpable, and I could see the growing rage in her eyes as she realized the full extent of Liam's betrayal. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured Liam's torment, but now the truth was out, and the roles had reversed. Liam was exposed, his actions laid bare for everyone to see. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as I watched him squirm, caught in his own web of lies. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a shaky defense that was no match for the truth. As his words faltered, Robert, who was usually reserved, couldn't contain his disappointment any longer and reached for the phone, taking it from me without saying anything. I watched as he held the phone to his ear, his jaw clenched in frustration. What you've done is not just a betrayal of your brother, but of this entire family, Robert began, his voice calm but heavy with disapproval. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they married. Your actions had repercussions and they irreparably harmed the faith we had in you. I taught you both to appreciate family, loyalty, and decency. What you've demonstrated today contradicts everything I've tried to instill in you, Robert continued. Liam attempted to intervene, but Robert cut him off with a stern, no. He took a long breath, his voice becoming colder. The contempt for your brother's sentiments, the disrespect for the sanctity of his marriage, it's unforgivable. You have not only damaged him, but you have also harmed the links that keep us together as a family. I believe your mother and I are to blame for who you have become. We will no longer let you get away with this behavior, Robert said sternly. I could hear Liam mumbling in the background, but Robert didn't stop there. He proceeded, his remarks methodical and pointed. Starting today, I am cutting you off from the college funds I put up for you. You may calculate your own university expenses. I won't be supporting your lifestyle anymore. Do you believe sleeping with married women makes you more manly? So, let's see what happens when you don't have my money to rely on. Robert, the family's rock, had drawn a line in the sand, and Liam, who had always gotten away with anything he wanted, was about to face the repercussions. As Robert delivered this, I remained composed. A part of me wanted to scream at Liam and tell him how much he had ruined everything, but watching Robert punish him felt like the ultimate vindication. I had exposed Liam's true nature, and it was clear he had underestimated the consequences of his actions. Liam tried to justify his behavior by twisting words and blaming everyone but himself, but Robert wasn't having it. He ended the call with a cold and final statement, and I felt a sense of justice wash over me. Margaret, who had been silently watching everything unfold, suddenly walked over and wrapped her arms around me. The embrace was tight and comforting, and it felt like something we hadn't shared in years. I could feel the weight of everything we'd been through, and for the first time, she wasn't just my mother, she was offering her full support. "I'm very sorry," she said softly, her voice full of passion. "I should have trusted you. I should have seen it sooner." I didn't know what to say. Her apology meant more than I could express, and in that moment, I felt a sense of vindication I never imagined possible. Margaret, the woman who had always been there for me, was finally acknowledging the pain I had been carrying for so long. Her arms around me were like a shield against the chaos of the world. After a few moments, Robert and I discussed the next steps, and he helped me find a lawyer who was experienced in handling messy divorces, someone who could guide me through the proceedings. Sophia and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, demanding alimony and accusing me of being unfit to care for our child, but everything seemed to work in my favor. The affair was a weighty factor, and I felt relieved knowing that the truth was on my side. We also arranged for a paternity test to establish the child's parentage. I was preparing myself for the findings, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock when I discovered that Liam was, in fact, the father of my kid. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and the pain of that realization was almost unbearable. The fact that the boy I had raised, the one I had cared for and loved as my own, was Liam's, made me feel like everything I had known was a lie. But despite the terrible blow, I knew I couldn't let it ruin me. God works in unexpected ways, and I found the strength to carry on. Sophia begged me to continue visiting our son, pleading that he shouldn't suffer because of the mess we had made. She argued that the boy deserved love and shouldn't be punished for something that wasn't his fault. But every time I saw him, I couldn't shake the reminder of Liam's betrayal. I hated that he reminded me so much of my brother, and seeing him hurt too much. I had always been self-sufficient, and now I had the freedom to live life on my own terms. After the divorce was finalized, I felt liberated, as if the weight of the past years had been lifted off my shoulders. I moved into a bachelor pad, a place that was entirely mine, and it felt surreal to be living on my own for the first time, especially since I had married so young and had never truly experienced independence. 2 weeks ago, Robert contacted me unexpectedly, his voice solemn but calm, and informed me he had been thinking a lot about his will and had reached a decision. He did not want to leave anything to Liam. "If there's one thing you should know about me, Samantha," he replied firmly, "when I make a decision, I stick to it. Liam will not get a dime. Not after what he has done." I could feel the weight of his words, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. After all that had transpired with Liam and Sophia, I knew Robert was done with him. He didn't mince words, he had never been a man of half measures, and once his mind was made up, it couldn't be changed. Liam had tried to reach out, showing up at our parents' doorstep, begging for forgiveness, but Robert refused to let him in. I was surprised to hear that Margaret, who usually couldn't resist Liam's tantrums, had also had enough of him. It must have been painful for her, but it was clear she was done as well. As we kept conversing, Robert revealed that everything in his new will would belong to me. "You're my daughter, Samantha," he stated firmly. "And you've always had my back. I trust you to do the right thing for this family." My mouth stiffened as he said, "I'll leave Liam $1 so he doesn't object later. He doesn't deserve a penny." I couldn't believe it. My Robert had worked his entire life for his assets, retirement fund, life insurance, and the house they lived in, all of which amounted to nearly $1 million. I had always known that Robert had worked hard, but hearing the full extent of what he'd accumulated hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't in it for the money, but knowing I'd have to bear this weight, this obligation, made everything seem more genuine. He went on to explain that the only condition in his will was that if he died before Margaret, she would continue to live in their house, but ownership would transfer to me. That didn't bother me at all. I would want to look after Margaret in her final years, and the house was just a symbol of that care, of the life my parents had built. But Liam found out about the alterations to the will, and when he contacted me yesterday, I could sense his desperation. Samantha, he began, attempting to sound sorry. I know I screwed up, okay. But I've been suffering. College has been difficult, and since Sophia found out about the paternity, she has been hounding me for child support. I do not have any money. I've been searching for part-time work but haven't found anything. It's been rough, dude. I don't know what to do anymore. I didn't answer right away. The weight of his words lingered in the air, and I recognized the same old Liam in his voice, the one who always found a way to play the victim. He continued, his tone softening, Look, I simply need your assistance. Okay. I need you to speak to the family. We can start again. I truly need your aid. I couldn't help but laugh in his face. As soon as he mentioned requiring my assistance, I was done. My voice was cold when I said, You should have thought about all this before sleeping with my wife and becoming pregnant. You don't get to crawl back now. Liam attempted to protest, his voice rising with each word, You're being unjust, Samantha. Sophia is equally at fault in this situation as I am. I shook my head, my patience becoming thin. I agree, but I've already divorced her. She is now your issue. Do not come to me with your mess. This is the result of your deeds, Liam. His tone changed, desperation seeping in as he raised his voice. You don't understand, everyone is on my case. Our grandparents and relatives will not stop talking about it. I don't know what to do anymore. I stopped him off before he could continue. I don't care, Liam. You are no longer the favorite son. You are the black sheep. You slept with your brother's wife. Nobody owes you pity, neither myself or anybody else. Liam began weeping, his voice breaking as he begged, Samantha, please. I cannot handle it any longer. I'm attempting to repair problems. Can't we start over? Hearing him weep for the first time in years struck me unexpectedly. Part of me wanted to feel for him, but the other half, the betrayed part, wasn't ready to let go of the hatred. I swallowed the bitterness and replied, We're finished, Liam. Don't call me ever again. I am not your sister anymore. You've lost that privilege. After that, there was a heavy silence, as if the weight of everything that had happened had settled between us. Liam said nothing else, and I hung up and sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a strange emptiness. I had just severed ties with my brother, the person I'd known my entire life. Since then, I've been reliving our talk in my thoughts, and I hate that I'm even thinking how his tears made me feel a bit bad. It's not that I wanted him to suffer, but seeing him cry like that was a first for us, at least since we were kids. I'm not going to lie, it stung a bit, but I also know that it doesn't alter anything, what he did, what he took from me. Now I'm sitting here, wondering if I should talk to our parents about him. I don't feel comfortable raising another man's child. Lucas was my son, at least in my mind, but now I know he's Liam's, and that hurts in ways I can't explain. I cried for days when I found out, and I still feel that raw pain every time I think about it. But the real reason I don't want to have contact with Lucas isn't just because he's Liam's son, it's because of Sophia. If I keep in contact with her kid, I know she'll find a way to crawl her way back into my life. Right now, I need my own space. You may call me cruel or selfish, but I don't care. I won't see him again for a long time, at least. It was my Margaret who informed Liam about my Robert amending his will, which was the tipping point. When Liam contacted me, I could tell it was his last effort to put things right. He sounded desperate, as if he'd exhausted all other options. I questioned Margaret about it in front of Robert, and she instantly broke down. Samantha, I've told you, I think he's learned his lesson, she replied, her voice cracking. I wasn't having it. You can't really be supporting him after all he's done, Margaret. After what he'd done to me and this family. My Robert, who had been silently listening, finally spoke out, his voice forceful. If you believe Liam's acts are forgivable, then we've got a problem, he said, staring squarely at Margaret. I'm not going to live in a home where you think what he did was all right. If you speak to him again, or if we find out, you may pack your things and go. His remarks were as definite as they could be. Margaret didn't dispute, and she didn't say anything after that. It was the first time I'd seen her silent on the subject, and honestly, it felt like a weight had been taken off my shoulders. I hope she learnt from her errors. It's been 5 months since all of that, and I can honestly say that my relationship with my parents has greatly improved. Robert and I now go golfing every weekend for fun, and it's nice. It's almost as if I've shifted from being his daughter to more of a buddy. We talk about everything, from work to sports to life in general. Margaret, on the other hand, still misses Liam, but she's kept her distance. The last I heard, Liam had dropped out of college because he couldn't afford his fees. He and Sophia were living together, raising Lucas, which honestly might be for the best. I can't even bring myself to feel sorry for him anymore. The things he did, I'm done with it. I don't bring up Liam with my parents, and neither do they. It's like an unspoken rule now. It seems like we've moved on from him, which is a big relief. Work has been going well. I was promoted 2 months ago, and my compensation has increased dramatically. It's been a welcome change. To be honest, I feel like I'm finally in a position where I can concentrate on my future without the weight of my past. In my personal life, I haven't dated anyone yet. I know I should, but I feel like I still need some time and space to heal. I've been going to therapy, which has been helpful, and I'm just taking things one day at a time. We'll see how that goes. I would have laughed if you had told me a year ago that I'd be getting married. After everything with Liam and Sophia, I'd buried myself in work, therapy, and trying to rebuild my life, and the thought of opening myself up to someone else seemed impossible. But then I met Isabella and everything changed. It wasn't like what I had with Sophia. It wasn't explosive or passionate. It was calm, steady, and, most importantly, genuine. She wasn't interested in drama or games. She wanted me for who I was, not what I had. We took things slowly, as I needed to, but over time, I realized I was ready for this. When I proposed to her, it felt like the beginning of something I'd been waiting for my entire life. We've been married for 6 months now, and it's everything I could have hoped for. I've never felt so at ease before. But in the back of my mind, there's always Liam. As much as I try to push him out of my thoughts, it's hard not to keep track of what's happening with him. It's not that I want to know, it's that in this small town, news travels fast, and I hear things. Things about his life with Sophia. Things about how they've been struggling. Things about how Lucas, the son I was led to believe was mine, is growing up in a household that's anything but stable. Liam and Sophia have been together, raising Lucas, but it's a far cry from the ideal family life. They are constantly scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck. Liam tried to play the family man card, trying to act like he was a changed person, but I knew better. The fact is, they are both living with the consequences of their choices, and as much as I hate to admit it, it's hard not to feel a little vindicated. Their life isn't easy. Liam and Sophia are always fighting about money, and Liam is trying to juggle working odd jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. It's nothing like the life they had planned when they first started their affair. Sophia is also no saint. I've heard that she's been reaching out to people for handouts, always looking for a way to make ends meet. But if you play dumb games, you get stupid rewards, right? I know it sounds callous, but honestly, I can't bring myself to feel sorry for them anymore. They created their bed, and now they have to sleep in it. What they did to me, to my family, was terrible. It wasn't just the affair or the treachery, it was how they tore everything apart. So now, when I observe their hardships, I can't help but wonder whether this is precisely what they deserve. Life doesn't give anybody a free pass, and they certainly didn't earn one. As for me, I've moved on. I'm building my future with Isabella, and I have a family I can rely on. My relationship with my parents is solid again, and we don't talk about Liam anymore, thankfully. I can't deny that part of me still wants to see Liam face the consequences of his actions, but I've learned that the best revenge is to live well, and that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, Liam may have gotten his life back with Sophia, but it's a hard life, one based on lies and terrible decisions. I don't have any pity for them. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. It's no longer my concern. I have my own life to live, and I'm not looking back. That's the tale. Do you believe certain betrayals are too huge to forgive? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.